few online clients, bit of online work for JPS, and then just a bit of chilling out, training as much as I can. What about
Beautiful.
you?
Me, man, it's just try and use this time as effectively as possible to better myself. From coaching online to a lot of the education pieces with Orphic to running this podcast and my own podcast to my own studies through university. The list is. I'm just trying to keep preoccupied as much as possible through all my responsibilities so I can come out of this period better.
Yeah, 100%. What are you studying at uni?
I am doing a exercise and nutrition science double degree to give me
Okay.
both caps so I can then, have that holistic understanding of both ends, because you realize very quickly that over the years, I have a great interest in understanding the body holistically. Like, there are so many body systems and they all interrelate, and it's something that, we end up treating the body in isolation a lot of the times. And, the stuff you do at JPS, the stuff you do with your supplementation obviously has to infer nutrition. It has to infer lifestyle, sleep. Like, it can't be blind. And so that's where my great curiosity comes from. Well, let me try and understand and be the best generalist possible with the human science of the body. So that is the road, the long, never-ending road that I am on, that I'm sure you recognize.
Absolutely. Start first, go for breadth first. Work out where your blind spots are, and when you find your niche, go deep.
Yeah, and
And try to
that's
really
a conversation
capitalize.
I've had with many people. It's like, well, when do you do that? Like, do you niche? Like, when do you do it? How should you start? I mean, where did it start for you? Actually, describe for people who don't know who you are. Like, what's the 1 minute elevator pitch? Who you are, your background, and how you came to be where you are now.
Yeah, cool. So my name's Aaron Hoey. I'm a coach and educator at JPS Health and Fitness. And it all started for me growing up in a small rural country town called Kattunga, which is about 30 minutes north of Shepparton. I grew up on a dairy farm, and up there when I was growing up, my primary interests were milking cows, football, and training. And I really fell into the whole health and fitness aspect, probably for two reasons. One, to improve my confidence and to try and get girls, which was relatively unsuccessful.
That's how many
But two, to
start.
improve
Don't
my
worry.
sporting performance. It's how most of us start, man.
All right.
And yeah, second was just improve my football, improve my kind of sporting performance. And that took me, when I graduated high school, I moved to Melbourne, settled into life in the big smoke. I started studying a double major, so a Bachelor of Science, majoring in biomedical science and exercise science at Victoria University. And I did my best to supplement my tertiary education with as much development and like internships with various like private sector coaches as I could, to try to have both a practical knowledge and that theoretical understanding. And I was lucky enough that Jacob from JPS saw a little bit of potential in me, and he took me on as a coach in 2017. And since then, I've been coaching my own in junior bodybuilding and junior powerlifting at a national level. And I've just been continuing to develop as a coach and educator, and trying to learn as much as I can in an industry which is incredibly saturated in knowledge, but also incredibly saturated in nuance. And it's borderline impossible to be able to truly perfect your craft in this field. So we're all just on the path to continually learning as much as we can.
Man, I really like how you phrased that. You said nuance, and I think that gets missed and not considered a lot of the time in this health industry, is that we paint black and whites, right? It's this way or it's that way. But it's not a lot of the time. There is huge biological variability between people a lot of times. Yes, we share about 90% of the same DNA, but there is genetically, there's differences. Biologically, epigenetically, we respond differently. Lifestyle, stress, there's endless examples. How do you, as an educator, as a teacher, as a coach, critically think to be able to pass out the nuance and be able to analyze things with like a fair approach?
That's a really good question. And I think that for starters, I find it's really useful to have, like, as you said, we are like 99% similar. So because of that, it is really useful to have a good understanding of what does constitute average. So you can start there and you can look there, but then also knowing that there's going to be responders on either side of the spectrum, usually under like a bell curve distribution where 97% of the population fits under 2 standard deviations from the mean. And if you can understand that, then you can have an approach where you give client what is going you give the client what is going to be optimal for the majority of the population, but then you have checks and balances in place so that you can measure their response. And from there, you can usually be able to integrate some kind of model where you can increase or decrease whatever it is you're trying to administer in order to get the desired outcome. So yeah, rather than kind of looking at a client saying, is this going to work or is this not going to work? You're really looking at to what degree does this work? What's the effect size of whatever I'm trying to administer, and from there you're able to really assess what changes are made, how it was influenced, and kind of that's in essence what I'm trying to get at is science is very you apply some kind of intervention, you have a hypothesis, you measure, you get results, and then you're able to ask further questions, and that process should be able to be administered to a lot of our clients.
Well said. Yeah, that's a great summary of especially the bell curve, the distribution and standard deviations. Do you find that, well, let's talk about supplementation, right? Give a background with your affiliation with Bulk Nutrients, who we've recently partnered with, which is how we came across you. Give us some background on that, and then I'd like to shift the conversation to supplementation, how that relates to exactly what you're talking about.
Cool. So Bulk Nutrients is an Australian-owned company. I think it's in a market which is incredibly saturated by just lots of high-end marketing, but not a whole lot of knowledge of the actual science behind supplements. I think Bulk Nutrients really stands out because they really care about their products. It's a lot less work goes into making it as sexy as possible, and a lot more work goes into making sure that the quality of product is really high. JPS has partnered with Bulk Nutrients, and I'm associated with JPS. Bulk Nutrients is just one of those really trusted sources, and if I want to inquire or have any specific questions around the supplements, they're always really, really quick to get back to me, which I fully appreciate, because I think that when you're looking at things like supplements, which can have a really large effect on someone's health if implemented incorrectly, you want to have full disclosure about what's going on with the products, and how successful they are, how they've been tested, and the full ingredient lists.
Absolutely. How do you go about prescribing supplementation? I know everybody's seen those pyramids, right? And supplementation usually is one of the lower tiers, but I think a pyramid is actually a really poor way to even display the influences that different interventions and different facets of health have on people. So it may be, instead of thinking like a pyramid, like a matrix, where everything is, it's you pulling levers. One goes further towards another depending on the time, the situation, the context. How do you think about pulling the lever of supplementation in regards to yourself and coaching clients? How do you figure out, reverse engineer, what supplementation is right for which client? Just a general overview of your principles around that.
Yep, sure. So for starters, I actually personally don't mind the pyramid, but you have to understand the limitations of that pyramid structure.
For sure.
So the actual pyramid itself, which you've probably seen, is muscle and strength pyramids for nutrition. And basically what it's got is it lists some variables in order of their effect size. So if we're looking at someone's body composition and health, you've got something like you've got your adherence and lifestyle on the bottom, and then from there you've got calories, macronutrients, micronutrients, timing, and then supplementation at the top. So for the average individual, the effect size of supplementation is going to be smaller by comparison to the rest. However, that's the limitation of this, is that is not applicable to every individual, and every individual is going to be potentially different. For example, if you've got a client who is anemic and has iron deficiency, it's they could be consuming like the best macros or the best like the best energy balance for them. But at the end of the day, they've got insufficient iron in order to function optimally, and they're going to have consequences as a result of that. Like namely, going to be like brain fog, lethargy, like inability to recover from training sessions, and that's not going to be able to fix unless you actually address the crux of the issue, which is their inability to either absorb iron or just insufficient iron intake in the first place. That's just a really quick example about the muscle and strength pyramid and how I view the utility of that resource, because I think it's a really valuable resource. It's important to understand that, yes, there are different variables which will have on average a different effect size for the individual, but just understanding when the nuance does matter. In regards to your question about a comprehensive framework of how to use supplementation either for myself or for clients, for starters, I'd probably address what not to do. And I do see this quite a bit in the industry. So the first thing is, do not use massive lists of supplements and just prescribe supplements for the sake of appearing smart. Like a lot of people start prescribing lots of these because if the more products I list and the more products I can name, the smarter I seem, and then I'll be able to, like, I seem like a bit of a guru because I know all my vitamins and minerals back to front, and I can recite the Krebs cycle. But in reality, just because something works doesn't, like, what's the effect size? If it works this much, is it really beneficial? Like, is it really worth your client who's already spending potentially worth you trying to convince them to fork out hundreds of dollars more a month for a supplement which is potentially going to yield very, very, very little return on their health and performance? So that's probably one of my main criticisms of supplements in the health and fitness industry. On top of that, just coaches who have huge cookie cutter lists of supplements and just prescribe the exact same supplementation in the same doses to clients. I think that's a relatively like a coach, educator kind of nutritionist. And people who prioritize supplements over the big rocks. So when I say big rocks, I mean making sure that you've got some basic training, some basic nutrition, some basic stress management, sleep, making sure you prioritize those things. And with my clients, I actually have a bit of a saying called earn your supplements. And that means that clients actually have to earn their supplements, like unless of course you've got an extreme circumstance. Like if a client's iron deficient, I'm not going to tell them to earn their supplement.
They've earned it.
I like to have clients show me that I like to have clients show me that they can nail some basic training, nutrition, lifestyle habits before we start delving into the real nuance of trying to optimize certain variables, because there's only so much that you can supplement like poor lifestyle and training nutrition habits.
That's actually, that's a really good point. Actually, as soon as I said that, they've earned it, they actually haven't. I disagree with what I just said. It's like we can modulate so many of these deficiencies with nutrition and lifestyle. Like, we could even look at things like gut health, which can, end up taking certain minerals and metals from the body, sucking them up, or they can end up secreting them, right? Depending on the specific type of gut ailment, like negative gram-bacteria. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. But with your supplementation, what are your big rocks? Like, what do you find like has the biggest effect size for their dose,
Okay, cool. Yeah, so with any client, when I go through this kind of thing, I do a bit of a needs analysis. Like what is the client's limiting factor in their health or performance objectives? And you also, alongside that needs analysis, you have to do like a cost versus benefit ratio to work out like, okay, what's the cost of giving this supplement? Because it's never free. Like there's going to be cost, whether that cost is potential side effects to do with health, other medication they may be taking, which is like just another risk, or even just money. Like for a lot of clients, like if finances are being pushed, especially at the moment with COVID, like people might have lost their jobs, they have to pay for those supplements. So the cost is always an issue. Cost cost is in like the cost versus benefit. Like there's always going to be costs, but there's also going to be potential benefits, and you have to be aware of what those benefits are for those populations. So for an example, a lot of the time, most clients who come to me, if you do kind of like a brief overview of their diet, they're usually lacking in protein. Most people, unless they're like a derrimate bro who literally only eats protein, most people consume relatively low protein diets. The general guidelines are around 1.6 to 3 grams per kilogram of body weight, depending on how well trained you are, what kind of phase you are in your training, nutrition journey, and preference. But 1.6 for me is a bit of a minimum factor. I see that most people probably benefit greatly from just like a health and longevity standpoint by increasing their protein to about 1.6 grams per kilogram body weight. And a lot of the time I might have like a really stressed out mom who works like full time. She's got young kids, and she comes to me, we go through the diet, and she eats maybe like a little bit of meat at dinner, and that's it for protein for the day. And she's consuming about 40 grams a day of protein, when realistically she should probably be having 100 to 120 as like a minimum. And in that case, like we really need a little bit more protein in your diet. Also, like for someone who's consuming like that little protein, there's potentially going to be some nutrient deficiencies there, like potentially like iron, zinc, magnesium, those kind of vitamins and minerals which can be found in like your meats and seafood. So for someone like that, they're kind of the immediate things which we need to address in order to create just like a more whole balanced diet. So for someone like that, like protein powder might just be like the first thing you kind of whack in. Like, you don't say take this protein powder. You say, would you be open to taking a protein supplement? These are the benefits which you might have from having a slightly higher protein diet. And you probably don't jump straight from 40 to 120 grams per day, but you might say, okay, we're currently having 40. Let's keep it as is. Let's add a protein shake. So that's going to be an extra 25 grams. So then you have a week at 65 grams, and then you might add a little bit more red meat or a little bit more seafood. Now you're up to 90 grams a day. And then within a month, you've taken Susan the soccer mom from 40 grams of protein a day to 120 grams of protein a day, and potentially taking out a few nutrient deficiencies by saying, let's include some oily fish twice a week. Let's include some red meat twice a week. And just trying to get a little bit more balance and variety into the diet. However, that's going to be completely different for like a derrimate bro, for example, who's eating 400 or 500 grams of protein a day, who's absolutely slamming protein.
400 to 500? Do you know people eating that much protein?
Yeah, I've seen
3 to 5 times body weight for some people.
Yeah, well, they're probably like 90, 100 kilo blokes. So yeah, 4 to 5 grams per kilo, Jeez. Which is a lot. And so that again, if you do a needs analysis, that's a real does that person need a protein shake? Probably not. If anything, you might be actually trying to get some protein out of the diet, and maybe seeing their macronutrient split to get a little carbs and fats if they're just absolutely slamming protein. So a good cost benefit analysis and a good needs analysis for each individual client is going to assist you in being able to have a more comprehensive approach to prescribing supplements.
Well said. I like the simplicity of protein. I think it gets missed a lot of the time in the, we try and make things fancy and complex with this supplement and that and this lifestyle habit and it's protein intake, it's going to help mitigate sarcopenia, which is age-related muscle wastage for those who don't know, and that's so important for your aging parents and individuals. Before we continue though, Aaron, I want to check, because the internet connection has been coming in and out. It's been a little bit, I've been able to understand you mostly, but is there anything on your end that you got going on in the background? Maybe some streaming or some torrenting? I don't know.
I'll just take my phone off the Wi-Fi. Nah, just Wi-Fi is a little bit dodgy in Old Tullamarine.
No, it's all good, man. We'll make it work. Okay.
Make it work.
The supplement protein, so important, I think, so understated. And I'm really glad you mentioned that. Now, going from there, what else are your big bang for buck supplementation protocols that you put in place for maybe a vitamin and mineral micronutrient perspective?
Yep, sure. So, from like a a vitamin and mineral perspective, there's a few there, and again, they're a little bit like context dependent on the kind of individual which you're trying to administer them to. One of the first ones I go for, and usually this is almost prescribed all the time to my clients after they've had a blood test, because I do like to screen with blood tests if possible, because blood tests can pick up on a fair few nutrient deficiencies. And realistically, as a personal trainer, like we're not dietitians, we're not general practitioners, and we really have to be careful when we start pushing things on clients if there's not going to be any real benefit, especially when we talk about vitamins and minerals, because a lot of these vitamins and minerals aren't necessarily going to yield any benefit unless there is a deficiency in the first place. Like a lot of your B vitamins, for example, are like water soluble. And so if you're just taking lots and lots of B vitamins in, you're probably just going to excrete them through your urine. So like a basic kind of blood test, getting some results, that's going to be really beneficial. And one of the big ones I look for is vitamin D deficiency. Yeah. So vitamin D deficiency is really, really prevalent in Australia, and in United Kingdom, for example. So I know for a fact in Ireland, the government's actually taken action because vitamin D deficiency is so prevalent with their lack of sunshine hours, especially during winter, that they actually fortify a lot of their dairy and a lot of their like seeds, breads, and cereals with vitamin D. Now, we don't necessarily have that in Australia. And as a result, I've seen some varying statistics. It's hard to get it really accurate, but usually the literature states that anywhere from 70 to 90% of Australians could be vitamin D deficient. And like, that's a lot. And I would dare say that would potentially be higher this year because of COVID restrictions, lockdown, most of it inside, desk bound, rarely getting sunlight. So I think that vitamin D deficiency at the moment, and just like a good vitamin D supplement, is a really, really good bang for your buck. One of the benefits of vitamin D supplementation is because vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin, you don't necessarily have to take it every day. You're more so looking to get a certain amount over the course of like maybe a week or over a month. So what I like to do is I get my, I can't remember the brand. I think it's called Now, but I get it off iHerb, and I get 10,000 IUs. And the recommended dosage of vitamin D is about 5 to 7,000 IUs a day. However, we do get some of that from like sunlight if we do go outside. But I'll take maybe 5 or 6 tablets, and I'll just like bolus dose it with a high fat meal at the start of a week, and that kind of amount should keep you going basically for a week. So I like to get clients onto that, especially if they're vitamin D deficient. And if they are deficient, you do usually need higher concentrations. But like a doctor or a dietitian will usually talk you through the kind of dosages which you may want to be taking depending on what your levels are.
All right. Yeah.
In regards to, yep. Oh, I was just gonna say, in regards to other vitamins, probably my biggest go-to for some clients who are at risk of like B vitamin deficiency. A lot of them, like women on the contraceptive pill, because contraceptive pill has been known to deplete a lot of B vitamins. I really like Thorne's B complex, by Thorne Research. Yep, I think that's a really, really good B complex. There's a few different ones with like different kind of concentrations of specifically, I think there's one which is like specifically like a riboflavin high, so like B2 is like a fair bit more concentrated, but there's like a few different ones, but most of them would be pretty good bang for buck just in regards to B vitamin supplementation for a lot of clients. And if your client either doesn't want to get the B complex, or they find it's a little bit expensive, because it is pretty expensive, Bioceuticals has some pretty decent B vitamin complexes, which I usually go to. And I didn't mention so before, but usually for like creatine and protein, and I almost always go bulk nutrients, because they're just really cost effective, high quality supplements, and they don't fill their proteins with any like additional things which are just unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. With bulk nutrients, and like I would have said this anyway, regardless if we had a sponsorship, but I think if you were affiliated, it's like, it's just the product. Like, it's no frills, it's no fancy. I know exactly what it is. It's very cost effective. Mm-hmm. Like, I just want L-glutamine. Mm-hmm. I just want creatine.
Yeah.
I'm just getting that, and I'm getting it in a big pack, and it's so simple, and they're not trying to add
Literally.
extra stuff and make it extra fancy and put all the fluoro colors on it and trying to sell. No, just give me the actual product. Thank you. And they do the great job at that.
Yeah. It's really, really good for like I've got a lot of blokes who are pretty no nonsense as clients. Like they don't want bells and whistles, and I'm like, mate, bulk nutrients, you get 6 months worth of creatine for $20. Off you go, and they're like done.
It's very simple.
Nothing fancy about it. Yeah, which is good.
So we've touched on some really key vitamins, minerals. We talked about iron, vitamin D. We talked about protein, creatine. We touched on. And B vitamins. With that complex, pretty solid complex for the average bell curve of people. Okay, pretty good sign.
Yep.
But how do you reconcile the gray area that is recommending supplements and nutrition as a coach, right? Because I've interacted with this. I've spoken to people like Dave O'Brien about this. Guys as amazing as him and people alike to him who aren't quote-unquote dietitians or biochemists or GPs, but they see amazing results and they have a really solid education behind their protocols that include blood work analysis and supplementation recommendations. How do you reconcile and understand when would be the right time for a coach and trainer to start prescribing and recommending those things?
That's a really good question, and I'll probably start this answer by saying that I follow a little bit of Dave O'Brien's work. Super knowledgeable guy, knows his biochem and science inside and out.
For sure.
That being said, Dave also probably deals with a lot of clients with underlying health issues, which I don't get exposed to, simply because people don't usually come to me for that reason. Like Dave will probably have people who literally seek him out saying, hey, I've had 8 years of gut issues. I need help. What can you do for me? And Dave's a lot more knowledgeable than they're there, and he's actually able to go through those things. Whereas I'm a lot more likely to get Susan, the soccer mum, who walks in, she goes, I've got tuck shop arms. I need to get rid of these. And we're like, okay, Susan, let's start from the start. Let's go through the big rocks, the basics. We'll get into we'll get you a blood test. We'll have we'll screen for some really basic nutrient deficiencies like iron, vitamin D. We'll see what your sleep's like. We're going to address those things first. And just knowing your limits as a practitioner is also important. If I've got a client and I'm giving them things which is within my wheelhouse and I'm not getting results and they're continuing to face issues, that's probably when I say, look, I don't know the answers. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to refer you out to somebody who has studied this for more years than I have, who has more experience in this area than I have, and is probably going to have a better chance of getting you the results that you need. And there are people out there who have people like Dave O'Brien. I think I can't pronounce his last name, but Jake Deschanel, I think it is.
Yes, I know Jake. He's great.
Yeah. So those guys, I look at their methods and I'm like, look, that's not what I would do because I am not necessarily confident in understanding all of the processes around necessarily what they do. However, they've got runs on the board, they've got results, they're able to back up what they say with results. So they might be the kind of people that I might refer out to. Otherwise, having good relationships with other allied health professionals. If you know a really, really good gastroenterologist who's worth their salt, if you know a really good endocrinologist who's worth their salt, you can go back and forth with those kind of professionals who've studied a specific area. We talked at the start of the podcast about breadth and depth. It's if I'm referring out to an endocrinologist, they've probably spent 7, 8, 10 years studying the endocrine system. If I've got a client who's got really, really bad testosterone levels, and I've had a few in the past, and they go and see an endocrinologist, and we kind of draw up a plan of attack moving forward that can change training, nutrition, and supplementation interventions, and then we go from there. And I've got the backing from that expert. I can be a lot more exact in my prescription, a lot more confident in my way of prescribing some of these interventions, because I understand that someone who knows more than me has kind of approved that framework. And like, yeah, especially in the health and fitness industry, like you can't know everything. Like it's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to be an expert in everything. So understanding your limits and like for sure, back yourself in, back your knowledge, like have faith in your understanding and the hard work that you've put in studying all these things. But if you are unsure, like there's never shame in asking for help or reaching out to someone else who potentially knows a lot more than you do.
Very well said. I think that's a great answer because like we think sometimes we want to handle it all. I've been there. You want to tackle it all. You know you're a coach. You're coaching the human body, so you think you can solve all these human health problems, but there's so many, and you're not going to be able to tackle them all at once. And somebody else is going to be able to do them maybe much more effectively and efficiently than you right now. So refer out. Then you can have a team of people working together to get towards a common goal more effectively.
100%. 100%. I do find that, well, not just coaches, but all practitioners in general, like a lot of us, because we spend our entire days solving problems and answering questions, we often look at ourselves as a real authority figure. And sometimes the ego can really get in the way of actually giving the best quality product and best quality interventions to your clients. Yeah. I found that reaching out, like to GPs, for example, and like I've got a few like ready-made letters which are written up, and I try to be like really respectful and stroke their ego a little bit, because sometimes practitioners can get very offended when you kind of reach out for help. Like they can say like oh, like I don't want to work with you. What do you know? You're just a PT. You're just a coach. Especially a couple. So it's mainly when reaching up to certain like higher end health professionals. Unlike like only a few, but I have had it before. But that's just why, like, hey, it's like at the end of the day, it's like we're trying to get the best result for your client. Like your job as a coach is to help manage your client's health. And if you think that it's in the best interest to refer a client out, then that's what you should do.
Absolutely. Well said. When you did your studies, you did, let me see. You did biomedical sciences and exercise science. Is it the double or
Yep.
majoring in both?
Yeah, so it was double major. So I majored in both
split.
exercise science and biomedical science. Yeah.
When you did that degree, what did you? Because like there's limitations in all tertiary education, but there's also great benefits to building a foundation. What do you find were the biggest gaps in knowledge for you when you did that degree that you had to plug, that you would want to make future students aware of?
Yeah, for sure. For starters, I found that like I'm very happy I did the double major. I found that the biomedical science stream that I was in was just full of really, really competent students, like high achievers, people who like strived really hard, studied hard, got really good results. A lot of them probably missed out on medicine by this much, by a fraction. And as a result, a lot of them were trying really hard in the biomedical stream to get good enough marks to be able to study postgrad medicine. So I was surrounded by a cohort of individuals who were very intelligent, very conscientious, and they worked hard. They got good results. The actual course itself was relatively solid, like lots of like just high-end theory, lots of physiology, biochemistry, like a little bit of like pharmaceutical science, pathophysiology. And I found that the theory side from the biomed degree was excellent. Like I gained a really comprehensive understanding of a lot of theory. However, from a practical standpoint, there was almost nothing in that biomed side, because realistically that degree equipped you to do further research or further study. Like it wasn't the kind of degree where you finish it and you go out into the real world and dominate. Like it was literally a stepping stone course. That being said, it was good. I do not regret doing that at all, because I think it does set me up in future for like more tertiary education. And I think the exercise science course, it had some parts which were good, but I find that it kind of lost itself in the sense that it was like exercise science is a really broad field. And I think that a lot of people go into exercise science because they want to coach or they want to do something similar to what we do. Like they want to coach, they want to educate, they want to do that kind of thing. But the course itself seems to be geared between either becoming a PE teacher or doing the clinical, like the exercise physiology kind of stream and working with like diseased and elderly populations. So I think that there's a real gap there for the kids who are coming through in the exercise science stream who want to be high achievers, who want to be able to understand physiology to a high degree, to be able to sort out what's true and what's not true, who want to work with like high profile individuals, or even just want to be able to deliver really high quality services to like general individuals. I think that I think that the overall standard of that exercise science in regards to like physiology, biochemistry could definitely be picked up a bit, like make it more difficult, make it more challenging. And then from the biomed perspective, like more practical skills for sure. And I'm really, really grateful that I supplemented my tertiary education with some free internships, lots of shadowing other coaches, because I gained a much more comprehensive understanding of how to apply the more advanced theory to the real world. And I think that a lot of my cohort that went through with me, the majority of them don't have those skills because they never went through any kind of practical system. They just had the theory and they got out, and most of them have just gone on to do further study, which isn't bad. Like there's always options there. Like if you want to become like a researcher or a scientist, or I've had a few friends who go on to do physiotherapy. But I think that given the sheer amount of people who want to do be high level coaches, like really high quality PTs, I think that the university should be inclined to deliver courses that help with like employability and like kids getting good jobs in the workforce. So implementing that theory with the practice.
You've said a lot of really relevant things. My brain got a bit went like, oh, I want to this. Would you, first thing, with biomedical science that you studied, which gave you a super comprehensive understanding of the theory of anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, pathophysiology, would you actually recommend for students thinking about becoming a coach and trainer, or just starting the exercise science, would you actually recommend they change over to biomedical sciences or something else that you would consider as well?
I think it does depend on what kind of trainer or coach you want to be. Like I think it's very important to have to reverse engineer your career, like decide what kind of coach I want to be and then work backwards from there. If you just want to work with just everyday people, you want to just be a really good coach, make people enjoy their sessions, like some basic kind of habit change and formation, your personal skills are going to be so much more important. Like your ability to communicate and connect with people is going to be invaluable by comparison to learning the Krebs cycle. Like you can know everything about oxaloacetate and all like acetyl CoA, but if you can't have a general conversation with Susan, the soccer mum, and convince her to get her step count up and eat some vegetables and get more than 3 hours sleep a night, you're probably not going very far as a coach. That being said, like a lot of people, if you want to take that next step, like if you do want to be the kind of practitioner that delves into the real nuances, gets into the weeds, potentially works with supplementation, that kind of thing, then you need to be able to understand physiology, biochemistry at a higher level. And I do think that like a biomed degree, like a pharmacy degree, they're going to give you a lot more knowledge and scope in that particular area in comparison to an exercise science degree. However, there's always going to be a trade-off. It's like for what you gain in like biochem and physiology, you're probably going to lose in some other aspect.
Great point.
So like there's a massive opportunity cost to learning. Like to learn one thing is to not learn something else. And so understanding what you want to do, what skills you require, and then like where your blind spots are, what you have to invest in from a knowledge perspective to pick up, what you can probably don't have to invest in because you might refer out in that instance in the future. Like just understanding that is going to help you make more precise and accurate choices about your future education decisions.
You said something really kind of profound and important. What is it? To learn one thing is
To
to
learn
not.
something
Yeah.
is to not learn something else.
Right. Very simple. To learn something is to not learn something else. And so, in that case, where do you think, and maybe to shift the conversation onto probably one of the bigger weaknesses that a lot of health professionals have, and that's the ability to communicate articulately and understand change behavior and psychology, would to learn something is to not learn something else. In that case, would you shift where a lot of young coaches learn to the human behavior side? How would you educate people on that side of coaching?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think that it is a massive limiting factor. Like getting clients to be able to do what you want them to do in an ethical way is like is it's an absolute conundrum. I mean, I've read a little bit of like persuasion science. Like, have you heard of Influence by
Robert Cialdini?
who's it by?
Is that his name?
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. Have you read that?
I haven't read it, but I've heard of it and I've dabbled in those ideas. Tell me what you've been learning
So
from it.
like, yeah, well, so like just to kind of like paraphrase for those who are unaware of those kind of texts, but influence, and there's also like Machiavellian intelligence. If you've heard about like Machiavellianism, it's basically like the ability to be able to to manipulate and influence people in order to do something which is good for you. And I think that the more you learn about that, it's a real it's a slippery slope. It's a bit of a rabbit hole because you learn it's like, wow, I can get people to do what I want them to do, but that is, as a coach, that is only good if it's in both of your best interests. Otherwise, it's pretty unethical. Like a lot of like advertising companies are going to use a lot of kind of influence techniques and persuasion techniques in order to get you to buy a product or subscribe to their services. And I think that knowing a little bit of that kind of science, I've found to be pretty cool in just understanding like human cognition, how you make decisions, how you can have biases, which are going to like gear you towards certain behaviors or products and things like that. But like before, just getting back to the question that you asked about the best way to kind of learn psychology, I think that the best way to learn about psychology and behavior change is to, one, have a bit of a finger on some of the more like the literature and the theory around cognition, biases, distortions, behavior change. But two, be able to have real world applications where you can actually see that, like you can see it in practice. And as a young coach, having a client list is the absolute perfect example. Like you want Susan to start doing steps. Like she's currently doing 2,000 steps a day. She's pretty desk bound. We wanted to get 7,000 steps a day. How can I convince Susan to get 7,000 steps? And like there are numerous ways you can do this, like some more manipulative than others, but like just basic communication and some like basic kind of like psychology around like habit behavior formation could prove really beneficial. So one, outline why you want Susan to get the 7,000 steps. And you can do that by like appealing to her values. So what does Susan value? Does she value her health? Yes. So you can say, Susan, if we get 7,000 steps a day, this is going to make you healthier in these ways, A, B, C. And you can like outline the benefits, the cardiovascular benefits of just being more active on a day-to-day basis, like increase in VO2 max, decrease in resting heart rate, increased longevity, increased cognition, those kind of benefits. If she values that, she sees that as a beneficial practice for her to engage in. And from there, you can, then you have to implement an action plan. And from there, you might say, okay, what do you enjoy doing? You enjoy listening to music? How about we go for a 30-minute walk a day and you listen to some music you like? So now we're pairing something enjoyable with a task which we previously weren't doing to increase the likelihood of us doing that, because now we're making that task more appealing to do. Some basic kind of psychology in that sense, and just like articulation and communicating why a certain behavior is beneficial is going to assist that client in being able to achieve that goal.
just noted down just one thing you said, and that was relating to the values, right? And I think that's really important, because what you want to do is you don't want to stick a round peg in a square hole. For example, I think a lot of coaches and health professionals, they deploy their own, and I've done this before, you deploy your own agenda and dogma of what you think optimal health is, right? And you try and plug that into the client.
100%.
You try and like overlay it. It's like, if you did this, this, and this, you could be a superhero. You could feel amazing. You could tick all these boxes. But a lot of people don't actually want to tick all these boxes that you want them to tick. They might just want
100%.
to like look better and just have like a bigger thighs and glutes and just be sexier in the mirror, right? But you're telling
100%.
them you got to do this, this, and this. It's overwhelming.
Yeah, I agree. Like, appealing to your clients' values and beliefs is one of the first ways where you can actually really get inside their head in a way where you're influencing their behavior in a mutually beneficial perspective. So if a client really, really wants to, like, let's say, for example, like I've had this before, you have an older client who comes to you, like a 45, 50-year-old woman, like cares about like her appearance and things like that, and you're telling her that we're doing a seated row or a face pull in order to grow her rear delts. She doesn't care about growing her rear delts, not at all. That's not what she came to you for. But if you say, Lisa, we're doing this to improve your posture, all of a sudden it's, I like this exercise because I want good posture. I want to be able to have my shoulders pinned back and I don't want to be all hunched over as I get older. So simply changing the way which you phrase a certain behavior changes the client's attitude towards that behavior, because you're now appealing to an aspect which they deem to be beneficial or desirable.
Absolutely, and I'm note-taking these things as I'm going along, just to like, because I don't know if when you do your coaching, right? Do you have templates, and do you have like systems that you use once a client gets in the door? What's your system from like as soon as you initiate or a client contacts you to that you end up coaching them? What are the questions you ask them to gather that important information to assess where they are on the change behavior scale, pre-contemplation, contemplation, wherever that is? How do you determine that?
That's a really good question, and in my opinion, that's a really ongoing process. Like, that's not the kind of thing that you knuckle down in one hour session. That's the kind of thing that you go over in an hour session, and then I send through a questionnaire on top of that initial consultation. So in the initial consultation, I really try not to grill my clients too much in their initial consultation. I try to just like care about them. I care about what their goals are, what they want to do, like how can I help them, like how I'm planning to help them, like kind of the gym, get you moving. For some people, they want answers. They're like, okay, like what's the plan of attack? And you have to be like pretty on your feet. You have to be like, right, we're going to do X, Y, Z, and that's going to help us achieve A, B, C. But that's going to come down to just the kind of individual which they are. But yeah, so in that initial hour, I try not to grill them too much on the comprehensive questionnaire, which is probably around 8 to 10 pages. It's pretty full on. Like, it's a pretty full on questionnaire. That being said, I get a lot of feedback based on how they answer the questionnaire. Like, if I get massive paragraphs of slabs for all these questions, I'm like, right, this person is invested. Like, this person is good to go. If I get one-word answers and like a few like blunt answers, it's like, they're probably just looking for some training. They're not super interested in like the nuance. They just want to get moving. They're after some results. They don't want to put in 100%. I've got one question, which is like a scale of 1 to 10, like how committed are you to reaching your goals? And I've got what a 10 looks like, what a 1 looks like, and they can circle where they think they belong, things like that. And if I don't get the questionnaire back at all, that also says a little bit about the kind of client I'm dealing with as well, which is fine. Like, that client just they might just be looking for 2 half-an-hour sessions a week, and they don't want to think about it when they're out of the gym. But those 2 half-an-hour sessions a week is good for their mental health. So in that case, I do what the client wants, and we just have a good two 30-minute sessions a week. In regards to like when you asked about like gathering data on a client, as I said, like that kind of process is always ongoing, and I'm always trying to ask questions, sometimes directly and sometimes I'm relatively just like, yeah, subtle about how I go about it. But you should always be continually screening your clients to work out like where their heads at, what their motivations are, what their intentions are behind certain actions. I think that's really important these days because some things go completely under the radar with like a questionnaire, and then you might get into week 5 or 6, and you find out that they're skipping social occasions because they've got anxiety around food, and you're like, right, okay, now that's a big red flag which we need to address because we are potentially working with someone who has a bad relationship with food or a potential eating disorder. And so if you can like ask some subtle questions around that, then you potentially might be able to refer them out to a professional relatively quickly, and then you're well on the way to solving something which potentially flew under the radar at the start.
Very, very interesting. Okay. So from there, then you take them, so you're at a point now where you're open to coaching pretty much anybody, right? It's not, is that accurate? Like you're gonna, whoever comes to you, you will assess and work with regardless of their level of commitment. Is that accurate?
Um, I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so. I think that because I think people surprise you, and I think the more you coach, the more you realize people can surprise you. Some people come in the door, and like for people who aren't like us, gyms are a really scary place, which can induce a lot of anxiety. Like if you're like a really overweight person and you've only ever thought of gyms as really scary places, like you're not going to be wandering in the gym full of hot air going, fuck yeah, ready to change my life. Like you're probably going to be like, this is scary. Like I'm uncomfortable. I'm in sympathetic nervous system activation mode. I'm like looking around. I'm scared. I'm shaking. I'm not listening to what the coach is saying because something loud happened over there on my left. And they're the kind of people that you're going to have a massive effect on their life if you can get through to them. So like I want to be able to help those kind of people,
Good for you.
make them feel comfortable, and yeah, just like once you kind of integrate them into like your systems and they're happy, they're more comfortable, then they start opening up. Usually you find commitment starts to pick up from there because you've built rapport and trust with that individual, and then you're well on your way to helping that individual.
Well said. With
I
the,
think that especially,
oh, go ahead.
yep. Oh, I was just going to say, like, when I think that one of the things which a lot of young coaches are skipping out on
Yeah.
is they want to skip straight to the clients that just do what they say. They just want to skip straight to the clients that do exactly what they say and don't question their methods. And I think one of the biggest like negatives with that is that you completely lose out on your ability to communicate with lots of people, but two, be able to articulate like the hows and the why about why you go around so many of your methods. Like if I've had clients come in who are like 30-year-old accountants who are like mums and stuff like that, and by the time they leave, like they're reciting like the muscle and strength pyramids, and they're telling me how many calories are in this and what micronutrients they need to look for in their meals, and like what's his name, what Mike Isotel's volume landmarks are. And I think that's awesome because I'm getting an individual who previously knew basically nothing and is now completely like they have a comprehensive framework, so that even if we were to stop coaching tomorrow, even if I was to change careers or drop off the face of the earth, that person is now empowered to be able to navigate through the majority of their training and nutrition for the rest of their life. So I think that's something which a lot of young coaches kind of skip out on. They go straight to I just want to deal with coaches who do what I just want to deal with clients who do what I say, because that means that I don't have to develop my communication skills as effectively.
They want the path of
It's
least
easy,
resistance.
exactly.
But that's a great point. You want to develop a well-rounded skill set in your ability to communicate with a wide variety of individuals and solve problems accordingly. But with the clients who, in your experience, with the clients who are more resistive to change, we all have experienced it. In fact, you don't even have to be a coach. You're a human being. You suggest something to somebody. Maybe they're unhealthy in some way that's deleterious to their health. You suggest this. you provide this, you communicate this way, resist. With those types of clients who are more resistive to change, how do you recommend people best communicate with other human beings who are resistive? What are we doing wrong?
Really good question. So for starters, I think this is, and like we kind of touched on this before, but sometimes that comes from we're projecting what our opinion of health is, or what our opinion of happiness is on that individual, when it's not the case. Like I might have a client who, like, yeah, they might have a little bit of extra body fat, but they're happy with it. They're fine. They enjoy beers with the boys. They've got a great family life. They've got a flourishing like work life. They sleep enough. They're healthy. Like most of their health markers are in check. And they're like, look, I could lose a bit of weight, but I'm happy. Like I value my beers with the boys. I like to be able to watch the Hawks get up on a Saturday and drink 12 carton drafts. And I like there's nothing wrong with my life. And if you're telling them change, realistically, like you're the one who's in the wrong. Like that individual is perfectly happy, and they're probably just coming to you for some training because they might not even ask for nutrition intervention, and you're just forcing nutritional intervention on them because you feel that that's going to make them happy. When realistically, they just want to train a few times a week, build some muscle, get a bit stronger, and feel good about themselves. So that's when the communication aspect becomes really important to understand where that client's at and what they genuinely want to get out with working with you. Or even if they're not working with you, like sometimes people, as you said, they're not ready for change. A lot of the time, for example, if I'm meeting with friends or some people who are outside of my work kind of environment, they don't see Aaron the coach, they just see Aaron, and they'll start talking about training, nutrition and things like that. And I'm like, yeah, cool. Like, good on you. I'm not going to correct you. I'm not going to do anything because you're happy just doing your thing. Like, who am I to butt in and tell you that you're wrong? Correct. However, if they start saying, hey, Aaron, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this? Have you heard of this? How does this work? I'm like, okay, now you're genuinely seeking out information. Once they're genuinely seeking out information, that's usually like they're at that first step. Like they're considering making the change. And usually I'll answer their questions and I'm like, hey, if you'd like to have a consultation with me, let me know. Or even better, sometimes, especially if you're a close friend, I can recommend someone who is a really, really good coach who you would gel really well with. And sometimes that might be the first step. So just knowing when people are ready to make that leap and when people are potentially just happy and just want to go about their own business.
I'm really impressed, Aaron, because there is a real level of how do I say, ego acknowledgement and ego dampening, and to be in that situation where you're a health professional, I'm a health professional, so we think we're the knowers. I was talking to Paul Meldrum about this on my podcast. Like, we are the knowers. It feels good to know things and educate and teach and be on this stage and be on a platform. Feels great, ego gratifying. But in situations where you could have every reason to butt in and drop your unsolicited 2 cents in every second sentence where somebody talks about, supplements or nutrition or whatever about training and health, to be able to take a step back, calm down, and just sit peacefully and quietly, even though you could say 1,000 words, but not needing to, because no one asked you, and because we don't need to ram down and force down change and information down people's throats. I just want to hammer home that point, because it's a hard lesson I've learned, and I think everybody goes through it at some point, or they just keep being annoying. But yeah, thank you for sharing that.
That's okay. My pleasure.
In regards to finish off this conversation, personal training and coaching, what do you think are the biggest gaps in knowledge that young coaches and trainers, I know we've touched on a little bit, but to conclude, that they have, that you would highlight?
If we're talking about really young trainers and coaches who are just getting into the industry,
and JPS too, they certify students, right? They deliver a Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. What do you tell them?
Look, I think that one of the literal first things that you can do as a coach to become ahead of the majority of the industry, irrespective of all the, like, as coaches, like, we want to be, like, as you talked about, like, being holistic, like, there's a big appeal to being able to problem solve multiple different facets, like, to be able to understand nutrition and supplements. Like, that's cool, that's sexy, that's fancy. But at the end of the day, if you're an 18, 19-year-old and you're getting into the gym, teach your clients how to, like, prescribe exercises correctly and how to, like, give good technique to your clients, like, teach your clients how to lift correctly and safely, and then teach your clients how to push with intensity, and all other factors, like, taken out, you will still get better results than the majority of the industry, just with those really basic skills of correct exercise prescription, correct exercise execution, and some good old-fashioned elbow grease in the form of decent relative intensity. If you can tick those boxes as an 18 to 22-year-old, those are the first boxes which you need to tick, because I think it's Louis Simmons. There's a quote from Louis Simmons. It's like don't have 100-pound shoes with a 10-cent squat or something like that. And it's like don't prescribe all your clients all the supplements and make your clients know the Krebs cycle, and they're still doing goblet squats. It's like, in order to really drive adaptation, you need to be able to deliver a disruptive stimulus to the system, and you want to do that in a safe manner by making sure that your client is executing with good technique, and being able to, like, progressively overload their technique over the course of months and years in order to grow muscle, get fitter, get healthier. So if there was, like, the one kind of box which I still just see unticked amongst so many personal trainers, especially young ones, it's like, nail that first. Like, make sure that if you're going to be a personal trainer, be good at training people, because nutrition and supplements and lifestyle interventions, like, they are important, they do yield results, but they're cherries on top. Because realistically, when people do come to a personal trainer, they're thinking that they're coming to you for that 30 or 45-minute session. So make sure that 30 or 45-minute session is absolutely as good a quality as you can deliver. Because if they don't want all your lifestyle advice and your nutrition advice, and you're delivering a very substandard training session, then you're not delivering a very good quality product. So make sure that you can control what you can control, and what you can control 100% is the time that client spends with you on the gym floor.
That's a great way to finish. I love the conclusion on the foundations of coaching. Like, doesn't get much simpler, but also doesn't get much more effective than that. Aaron, I think this is a nice place to finish the conversation. Unless you have any last comments, thoughts, asks of our audience, or just where people can find you.
So you can find me Aaron Hoey _ on Instagram. I'm continually trying to buff up my online presence. I'm not a very natural kind of social media person. That's kind of one of my skill sets, which I've had to really work on the last year or two and try to improve that. So I've been trying to buff that up. You can find me at, like, JPS Health and Fitness, JPS Education. I have various responsibilities within JPS in regards to, like, the education there, mentoring and lectures. And yeah, just to finalize, this is a bit of a shameless pitch, but if any of you are looking to, after Orphic education, you get certified and you potentially university, you don't know if it's for you or not, you want something which is geared a lot more towards that blend of education with the practicality, the JPS mentorship is really good bang for buck. And what we try to do is we try to take all the aspects of a tertiary education that is applicable to personal training, and we've tried to package that into our mentorship. So when we talk about nutrition, lifestyle interventions, health, biochemistry, training, performance, it's all through the eyes of a practitioner who's giving this to their clients. So I think that that's a really, really valuable resource, and I'm really keen to see where that grows to in the next few years.
It's such an exciting time. Just the fact that, like, there's never been more options to not put yourself in $30,000, $20,000, $40,000 in debt, but instead you could drop a couple grand in JPS, a couple grand in Melbourne Strength Culture, a couple grand in Woodfords, a couple grand at Fifth Element Wellness, a couple grand at Athletes Authority in Sydney. I just keep reeling them off. It's like there's so many amazing private facilities. You could be
Muscle Nerds, another one, really good.
Yeah. Okay. Do you got any other
Muscle Nerds Foundation course? So I'd say I'm familiar with Strength Culture. I haven't done it. They're really good. They're really good for, like, execution, like lift, like exercise prescription, things like that. I think JPS Education, we're really good. I'm a little bit biased when I say that, of course. I found Muscle Nerds to be really good. However, I found Muscle Nerds, their foundation course, to be a little bit more advanced. And I think that Muscle Nerds would be really beneficial if you're coming from a place of decent understanding of a lot of the basics, like a lot of the big rocks. Like your biochemistry has to be relatively firm before you kind of set foot in those kind of worlds, because you do start talking about like the biochemistry behind certain supplements. And if you struggle with your basic nutrition, your basic training, you're going to really, really struggle, and a lot of it's just going to go over your head. A lot of information is only really useful if you have a comprehensive framework which you can kind of conceptualize, so that then you can apply it. Like learning things just for the sake of learning things is, but it's just a bit of mental masturbation, and it feels good, and it makes your ego really pronounced, but how beneficial is it to you?
It's a dangerous slope that we've all, I mean, I know I've been there. It's because you love learning. It's so much cool shit to learn.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
Well,
yeah, they're my go-tos. So
yeah, but
I listed off.
I just want to finish with that, because that's such an exciting thing where if you're a student, you don't have to do a degree right now. Like, especially in this age, like you can become a phenomenal coach, by just doing a Cert 3 and 4 or just some mentorships, and you'd be off to the races.
Value in tertiary education system, and I think we have this conversation over and over again at JPS about like the pros and cons, like the trade-offs, the caveats between certain fields, that if you want to become qualified in those fields, you have no other option than to go and do the qualification. If you want to be a doctor, like there is no amount of there's no amounts of private facility internships that you can do in order to actually prescribe medicine. You actually have to be a medical practitioner, a licensed medical practitioner, sorry. Same with protected fields like dietetics and pharmacology. Like those fields, there is definitely an advantage to going and getting a tertiary education in those fields, because you become licensed and it's a protected field. You can't do those jobs without the qualification. So as we kind of spoke about before, it's like knowing where you want to finish up and being able to reverse engineer from there to work out where you need to be. There's no need to put yourself $30,000-$40,000 in debt if you want to be a really good personal trainer. That being said, getting a degree does give you options down the track. You can go and do a master's, and then it's only 1 or 2 years to become a dietitian, or 1 or 2 years to become a physiotherapist. So understanding where you're going is still always important. Always have your finger on that pulse and thinking about the future.
A very well-rounded conversation right here, Aaron Hoey. Thank you so much for taking the time, my friend. It's great to meet you, and I look forward to our paths crossing in the future, man. You sound like a really high-quality coach, and it was a pleasure to speak.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, Alex.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right, that is Aaron Hoey, ladies and gentlemen, from JPS Health and Performance. Orphic Education podcast number 21 in the books, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. Basically, a much more grounded conversation on supplementation, on change behavior, on just the basics, and a very well-rounded conversation on how we can communicate and coach and put in strategies for the everyday client, and the utility of things like degrees versus private mentorships, and what methodologies and principles surround them. Really was pleasantly surprised by the level of understanding, sophistication by Aaron. I didn't have much context on him before, but definitely seems like a really high quality coach. And if you guys are in the Tullamarine area, someone to definitely look out for. As for us, Orphic Education, if you guys want to get your own Cert 3 and 4 in fitness and are serious about becoming a personal trainer and coach, and want to align yourself with one of the most comprehensive, practical certifications in the country, of course that's biased, but we can prove it, we can demonstrate it, then we might be a good fit for you if you're serious. We do this podcast every Wednesday, 10 a.m. live. We've spoken to a bunch of really amazing coaches, and it's just really honorable thing, and I'm so proud and honored to be able to speak to such high-level practitioners week in and week out. I kind of pinch myself sometimes to think about the future, the past, and the current present, about all the amazing people I've spoken to throughout this Orphic podcast. Here's a list of some of the people we've spoken to, and I hope you guys enjoyed this one. There's available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Facebook. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. I'm Alexander Emanuel. You can find me, my coaching, and my podcast and everything else that I do by just Googling my name. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you so much. Much love. Stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and keep breathing. We'll be all right.